I am Howard, 62 years old, retired Army veteran and business owner. I still remember the shock on my son William's face when he demanded I pay his wife's $300,000 student debt, and I simply walked away. After a lifetime of supporting him, watching him become a man I no longer recognized, I realized sometimes the only way to save yourself is to leave. So that is exactly what I did. Packed my bags and never looked back. Before I tell you what happened and how it changed everything, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. If my story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up to help others find it too. My story begins with dreams of a simple family life. After serving 20 years in the Army, retiring as a master sergeant, I was ready to settle down. I had married my high school sweetheart, Linda, before enlisting, and our son William was born during my second year of service. Military life was tough on all of us. The constant moves, my deployments, the strain of separation. But we made it work. Linda took on the lion's share of raising William while I was away, and I will forever be grateful to her for that. When I retired from the military at 40, I used my savings and a small business loan to open a hardware store in our hometown of Portland, Oregon. It was nothing fancy, but it was mine. Linda worked alongside me, keeping the books and helping customers. We built it from nothing into a thriving business that supported us comfortably. We were not wealthy by any means, but we were secure. William was 18 when I left the service, just starting college at Oregon State. We had saved diligently for his education, managing to cover his undergraduate tuition and expenses. I was proud when he graduated with a business degree, and even prouder when he was accepted to an MBA program at a prestigious university. "I want to be like you, Dad," he told me. "Build something of my own." Those words meant everything to me. Despite all the birthdays and events I had missed during my deployments, despite the arguments and difficult teenage years, it seemed like William and I had come through it all with a strong bond. The problems began when William met Sophia during his MBA program. She was beautiful, charming, and from a wealthy family in Connecticut. The first time he brought her home, Linda and I were impressed by her poise and education, but something felt off. There was an expectation in the way she looked around our modest home, a slight curl of the lip when she examined our furniture and decor. "Your parents are so authentic," she told William later, not realizing I could hear from the kitchen. The way she said authentic made it clear it was not a compliment. William changed during his relationship with Sophia. His calls home became less frequent. When he did visit, he would make comments about how provincial our town was, using words and expressions that had never been part of his vocabulary before. He started criticizing the way I ran my business, suggesting modernizations that made little sense for our loyal customer base. "You could really scale this operation, Dad," he would say, using MBA jargon that felt foreign coming from my son's mouth. "Maybe open a chain, get some investors." "I am happy with what I have built," I would reply. "Not everything needs to be bigger to be better." He would roll his eyes at this, a gesture I had never seen from him before. That is such old-school thinking. William and Sophia married in an extravagant ceremony in Connecticut that must have cost her parents a fortune. Linda and I felt out of place among the wealthy guests, the elaborate floral arrangements, and the 5-course dinner. My new in-laws were polite but distant, clearly viewing us as a step down for their daughter. After graduation, William took a job with a consulting firm in Portland. I was thrilled to have him back in town, hoping we could rebuild our relationship. He and Sophia bought a house in the most expensive neighborhood, one they clearly could not afford on his starting salary. When I expressed concern about their spending, William brushed me off. "We are investing in our future, Dad. This is how successful people think." Linda was diagnosed with breast cancer the year after their wedding. It was aggressive, and within 6 months she was gone. William and Sophia attended the funeral, of course, but Sophia spent most of the service checking her phone. William seemed uncomfortable with my grief, patting my shoulder awkwardly and making vague offers of help that never materialized. I was devastated. Linda had been my partner in everything for over 40 years. Without her, the house felt empty, and even the business lost its joy. I continued working because it was all I knew how to do, but my heart was not in it anymore. A year after Linda's death, I made a decision. I sold the hardware store to my assistant manager, who had been with me for 15 years and knew the business inside out. The sale, combined with my military pension, my savings, and Linda's life insurance, left me financially secure for retirement. William was appalled when I told him. "You did what? Without consulting me, that business was my inheritance." I was taken aback. "I never promised you the business. You have your own career. You have never shown any interest in running a hardware store." "It is not about the store itself," he said impatiently. "It is about the asset. The real estate alone in that location is valuable." I did not recognize the son I had raised in that moment. He was not concerned about the business I had built, the relationships with customers, or the employees who depended on it. He saw only a financial asset that he felt entitled to control. That conversation was the beginning of the end for us. Over the next year, William and Sophia began inserting themselves more and more into my financial affairs. At first, it seemed like concern. William suggested I sell the house and move to a condo, which was not unreasonable, given that I was now alone in a 4-bedroom home. But then he started pushing me to invest in various schemes that his friends were involved in. When I expressed skepticism, he would become frustrated. "You do not understand modern finance, Dad," he would say dismissively. "These are opportunities that could double or triple your retirement fund." I had always been conservative with money, a trait that had served me well through the years. I had seen too many friends lose their savings to risky investments, and I was not about to make the same mistake. The situation came to a head when William and Sophia invited me to dinner at their house. It was unusual for them to do so. Normally, if we saw each other, it was at a restaurant where Sophia would make a point of insisting on paying, as if to highlight the fact that they could afford places I would not choose on my own. The house was immaculate, as always, decorated in the sterile modern style that Sophia preferred. During dinner, they were unusually attentive, making sure my wine glass was always full. After dessert, William cleared his throat and exchanged a look with Sophia. "Dad, we wanted to talk to you about something important," he began. "Sophia and I are thinking about starting a family." For a moment, I felt a surge of joy. A grandchild. Maybe this would bring back the son I had known. "That is wonderful news," I said sincerely. "Yes, well, before we can do that, we need to sort out some financial issues," William continued. "The thing is, Sophia has significant student loan debt from law school, about $300,000. I nodded, not sure where this was going. "That is substantial, but with both your incomes, I am sure you can manage it." Sophia let out a little laugh. "Well, that is what we wanted to discuss. We were hoping you might help us with that." I set down my fork. "Help you? We thought you could pay it off," William said bluntly. "You have the money from selling the business and Mom's life insurance. It would give us the freedom to start our family without this burden." I was stunned into silence. They were asking me to hand over $300,000, a significant portion of my retirement savings, to pay off debt that they had willingly taken on while they lived in a house they could barely afford and drove luxury cars. "I do not think that would be possible," I said finally. "That money needs to support me for the rest of my life." William's face hardened. "You do not need that much to live on, Dad. Your expenses are minimal, and this would be for your grandchild's future. A grandchild that does not exist yet, I pointed out. And why can you not pay the debt yourselves? You both have good jobs. Sophia jumped in her voice, syrupy sweet but with an edge. We have the house payment. The car's our lifestyle. We would have to make significant sacrifices to pay off my loans. Sacrifices that you are not willing to make, but you expect me to sacrifice my security instead. I said, the realization dawning on me. It is not a sacrifice, William insisted. It is an investment in your family's future. Mom would have wanted to help us. The mention of Linda set something off in me. Do not presume to tell me what your mother would have wanted. She would have been appalled by this conversation. The facade of politeness dropped completely then. William accused me of being selfish, of not caring about his future. Sophia chimed in, suggesting that I was being unreasonable and that most parents would gladly help their children in this situation. As they continued, I looked at them. Really looked at them. My son, whose education I had saved, for whose wedding I had contributed to, despite it being far beyond my means. This young man who had never wanted for anything I could provide. And his wife who had come from privilege and expected it to continue, who had never shown me real warmth or respect. In that moment, I made my decision. I would not be manipulated or bullied, not even by my own son. The argument at William and Sophia's house escalated quickly after I refused to pay her student loans. Their polite masks completely fell away, revealing the entitled people they had become. You are sitting on a pile of money that you will never use, William said, his voice rising. Meanwhile, we are trying to build our lives, start a family. How can you be so selfish? Selfish, I repeated, incredulous. I worked hard for everything I have. I saved carefully. I put you through college without loans. And now you think I am obligated to pay off Sophia's debt because you two do not want to adjust your lifestyle. Sophia crossed her arms. My parents would do it in a heartbeat if they could. But they invested heavily in the market downturn and are not liquid right now. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Her not liquid parents lived in a mansion and belonged to a country club. They simply did not want to help either. This conversation is over, I said, standing up. I love you, William, but I will not be manipulated like this. If you walk out that door without agreeing to help us, William said coldly, do not expect to be part of our lives or any future grandchildren's lives. The threat hit me like a physical blow. My own son was attempting to blackmail me emotionally. I looked at him, searching for any sign of the boy. I had raised the young man who had once said he wanted to be like me. I saw nothing familiar in his eyes. Goodbye, William, I said quietly, and walked out. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. Had I failed as a father? How had William become so entitled, so willing to manipulate his own father? And more importantly, what should I do now? Sleep eluded me that night. I paced through the house that suddenly felt like a museum of my past life. Linda's touches were everywhere. The curtains she had sewn, the collection of bird figurines, she had loved the garden visible through the windows that she had planted. What would she have advised me to do? I knew the answer. Linda had been kind, but never a pushover. She would have been heartbroken to see what William had become. By morning, I had made my decision. I could not continue to live in this emotional limbo, constantly manipulated and made to feel guilty for not financing my adult son's lifestyle choices. I needed a clean break, a fresh start somewhere new. I called my friend Robert, who had served with me in the Army and now lived in Arizona. We had stayed in touch over the years, and he had been a support after Linda's death. I need a change, Rob, I told him. Is that offer to visit still open? Of course, he said without hesitation. Stay as long as you want. I have plenty of room. Next, I called my attorney David, who had handled the sale of my business. I explained the situation and what I wanted to do. Are you sure about this, Howard? He asked, concern evident in his voice. It is a big step. I am sure, I replied. I need to do this for my own sanity. Over the next week, I put my plan into action. I decided to sell the house and most of its contents. I contacted a realtor who had helped several of my friends, and she assured me the market was strong. I began sorting through my possessions, setting aside the few treasured items I would take with me. Linda's wedding ring, and some photos, my military memorabilia, a few family heirlooms that had meant something to both of us. I arranged for an estate sale company to handle the rest. It was surprisingly liberating to let go of the accumulated possessions of a lifetime. Each item I decided not to keep felt like shedding a small weight. I visited my bank and set up a new account that William would have no knowledge of. I transferred most of my funds there, leaving only a small amount in my original accounts. I changed my mailing address to a post office box and forwarded all important mail to David's office. Throughout this week, my phone rang repeatedly with calls from William. At first, I let them go to voicemail. His messages started out angry, then shifted to concern, then back to anger. Finally, I listened to one where he demanded to know why I was not answering, saying he and Sophia were worried about me. I doubted their worry was genuine, but I decided to respond one last time. I texted him simply, I am fine. I need some space. Please respect that. His reply was immediate. We need to talk about this, Dad. You are being unreasonable. Come to dinner tomorrow and we can sort this out. Still trying to control the situation, still assuming I would eventually give in. I did not respond. 2 days later, as I was boxing up the last items I planned to keep, there was a pounding at my front door. I opened it to find William standing there, his face flushed with anger. What are you doing? He demanded, pushing past me into the house. Why haven't you been answering my calls? I asked for space, I said calmly. He looked around, noticing the boxes, the empty spaces where furniture had been. What is going on? Are you moving? Yes. Moving where? Why was not I consulted about this? This house is part of my inheritance. And there it was again. The entitlement, the assumption that my life and possessions were somehow his to control. William, I said, my voice steady, I am 62 years old. I do not need your permission to make decisions about my life. But what about us? What about our family? You cannot just disappear. I am not disappearing. I am choosing to live my life on my terms, something I have earned the right to do. This is because of the loan thing is not it, he said, his voice rising. You are punishing us because we asked for help. No, William. This is because I have realized that our relationship has become toxic. You no longer respect me as a person. You see me as a resource to be used, an obstacle to your plans, or a pawn to be manipulated. I cannot live that way anymore. That is not true, he protested, but there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew I was right. It is true, I said gently. And until you can see that and make changes, I think it is better if we have some distance. So you are abandoning me, your only child. You are a 35-year-old man with a successful career and a wife. You do not need me except as a potential source of money. That is not a relationship I want to be part of. He stared at me, speechless for once. Then his expression hardened. Fine, he said coldly. Have it your way. But do not come crawling back when you realize you have made a mistake. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood in my half-empty living room feeling a complex mix of sadness and relief. The son I had raised was gone, replaced by this entitled stranger. Maybe someday he would find his way back to the values Linda and I had tried to instill in him. But I could not wait around hoping for that transformation. I had to live my own life. The next morning I got a call from David. "William came to my office," he said. "He was demanding information about your finances, claiming he was worried about your mental state and needed to protect your assets." I sighed. "What did you tell him?" "That I could not discuss your affairs without your permission, and that you seemed perfectly lucid to me." He was not happy. "Thank you, David. I appreciate your discretion." He mentioned something about a conservatorship, Howard. "I do not think he could get one, but you should be aware." A conservatorship. My own son was considering trying to have me declared incompetent to gain control of my finances. That confirmed my decision was the right one. "I will be gone before he can try anything," I assured David. "The house closes next week, and I will be on the road to Arizona the day after." "Good luck, Howard. Keep in touch." As the day of my departure approached, I felt increasingly lighter. The house sold quickly above asking price. The estate sale was successful, converting most of my remaining possessions into cash that would further pad my retirement fund. I donated what did not sell to a veterans organization. On my last night in the house, I wrote a letter to William. Not an angry letter, but one expressing my sadness at how things had turned out, my hope that someday he would understand my decision and my love for him despite everything. I told him that I would always be his father, but that I needed to live my life with dignity and self-respect. I left the letter with David to give to William after I was gone. The next morning I loaded my few remaining possessions into my car and took one last look at the house where Linda and I had built our life, where we had raised our son. I felt her presence beside me, supporting my decision. "Goodbye," I whispered to the house, to my old life, and in some ways to the son I had once known. Then I got in my car and drove away, heading toward a future that was uncertain but my own. The drive to Arizona was long but therapeutic. With each mile that passed, I felt the weight of disappointment and manipulation falling away. I took my time, stopping at points of interest along the route, eating at local diners, and staying in modest motels. It was the first real road trip I had taken since retirement, and I found myself enjoying the freedom of the open road. I arrived at Robert's home in Scottsdale after 5 days of leisurely driving. Robert and his wife Janet welcomed me with open arms, showing me to their comfortable guest room and insisting I stay as long as I needed. "The guest house out back will be finished in a couple of months," Robert told me. "You are welcome to it if you decide to stay in the area." And their kindness was overwhelming after the emotional coldness I had experienced with William and Sophia. Janet was a wonderful cook who insisted on making my favorite foods once she learned what they were, and Robert was the same steadfast friend he had been during our military days, ready to listen, but never pushing. During my first week there, I received several calls from David. William had indeed come back to his office first, demanding to know where I had gone, then insisting that David reveal details of my financial transactions. "He seems to think you have hidden assets he should know about," David told me. "I reminded him that you are a competent adult with every right to privacy in your financial affairs." "How did he take that?" I asked. "Not well. He mentioned getting another lawyer involved. I think he is bluffing, but I wanted you to be aware." I thanked David for his continued support and asked him to keep me updated. I had no intention of hiding from William permanently, but I needed this time to establish my new life without his interference. Over the next month, I explored the Scottsdale area with Robert and Janet as my guides. The desert landscape was a stark contrast to Oregon's lush greenery, but I found its stark beauty appealing. The warm, dry climate was easier on my joints, which had suffered from years of military service and then standing on concrete floors in the hardware store. I began looking at condos in a moderately priced retirement community not far from Robert and Janet's home. The community had a golf course, though I had never been much of a golfer, a community center with activities and many residents who were veterans like myself. "I think I could be happy here," I told Robert one evening, as we sat on his patio watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of pink and gold. "You deserve to be happy, Howard," he said simply. "After everything you have done for others, it is time to do something for yourself." A week later, I made an offer on a small but comfortable 2-bedroom condo. It was accepted, and I began the process of officially relocating to Arizona. I transferred my driver's license, registered to vote, and set up utilities in my new name. Yes, my new name. On David's advice, I had legally changed my name from Howard Ellis to Howard Lawrence, taking Linda's maiden name. It was not an attempt to hide completely. A determined search would connect the two names, but it would provide a layer of privacy and make it harder for William to track me down immediately. "Think of it as a fresh start in every way," David had suggested, and I had agreed. The condo was sparsely furnished at first, just the basics I needed to live comfortably. But over time, I began to make it my own. I joined a veterans group that met twice a week at the community center. I volunteered at a local elementary school, helping children learn to read. I even took up painting, something Linda had always encouraged me to try, but I had never found time for during my working years. Gradually, I built a new life for myself. A quieter life, perhaps, than the one I had known as a business owner, but a peaceful one filled with small pleasures and new friendships. 3 months after my arrival in Arizona, David called with news. William had filed a missing persons report and had been questioning neighbors from my old neighborhood about my whereabouts. "He seems genuinely worried," David said. "Or at least that is the face he is putting on for the authorities." I considered this information carefully. As hurt and angry as I was about William's behavior, he was still my son. I did not want him to truly believe I was missing or in danger. "Tell him I am safe and well," I instructed David. "You can tell him I have relocated and changed my name for privacy. But do not tell him where I am unless he demonstrates a genuine change of heart, not just a renewed attempt to access my finances." David agreed to pass along the message. 2 days later, he called back. "William did not take the news well," he reported. "At first, he was relieved that you are okay, but when I mentioned the name change and relocation, he became angry. He demanded your new contact information, which I refused to provide as per your instructions. He then accused me of helping you hide assets that rightfully belong to the family." I sighed. Still the same William, still focused on what he perceived as his entitlement to my money. "Thank you for holding firm," I told David. "If he truly wants to reconnect on a personal level without financial motivations, he knows how to reach me through you." The months passed, turning into a full year in my new home. I settled into a comfortable routine, making friends in the community and finding purpose in my volunteer work. I kept in regular touch with Robert and Janet, often joining them for Sunday dinners or accompanying them on day trips to explore Arizona's natural wonders. Occasionally, David would update me on William's attempts to locate me. He had hired a private investigator at one point, but without access to my financial records or new identification details, the investigator had little to go on. William had also tried to contest the sale of the house, claiming he should have had input as my heir. But since the sale had been legal and I was of sound mind, his challenge went nowhere. What struck me about all these efforts was that none of them seemed motivated by genuine concern for my well-being. William never asked David if I was happy, if I was healthy, if I needed anything. His inquiries always centered around my assets, my location, and his perceived right to be involved in my financial decisions. On the anniversary of my departure from Oregon, I received a letter forwarded through David. It was from William, the first direct communication since our confrontation in my old house. I opened it with trembling hands, hoping against hope that it might contain some recognition of his behavior, some genuine expression of missing his father rather than my money. The letter was 3 pages long, and at first glance it seemed promising. William wrote about missing me, about regrets regarding our last interactions, about Sophia's pregnancy, and his desire for his child to know its grandfather. But as I read more carefully, the true nature of the communication became clear. There were no real apologies, no acknowledgement of his entitled behavior or manipulative tactics. Instead, there were subtle digs about my abandonment of the family implications, that I had somehow cheated him out of his inheritance by selling the house, and finally a renewed request for financial assistance. Sophia's student loans continue to be a burden, he wrote. With the baby coming, we are under tremendous financial pressure. As my father, I know you would want to help secure your grandchild's future. We are willing to put our disagreement behind us if you would reconsider assisting us with this burden. Even the news of my coming grandchild was presented as leverage, a tool to try to access my money. I set the letter down, a profound sadness washing over me. William had learned nothing from my departure. He still saw me primarily as a financial resource, not as a person with my own life and dignity. I did not respond to the letter. Instead, I asked David to send a small gift for the baby when it arrived. A silver rattle that had been in Linda's family for generations, one of the few family items I had brought with me. I included a brief note congratulating them on the birth, but made no mention of William's financial requests or any potential reunion. The baby, a boy they named Alexander, was born 2 months later. I received a birth announcement through David, but no thanks for the rattle, no photos, no invitation to visit. Just another silence that confirmed my decision to maintain my distance had been the right one. As my second year in Arizona began, I felt increasingly settled in my new life. The initial pain of separation from William had dulled to a quiet sadness that I carried but did not let define me. I had made peace with the fact that the son I had raised and the man he had become were 2 different people. I cherished my memories of young William while accepting that adult William was someone I could not have a healthy relationship with under current circumstances. And then on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, as I returned from volunteering, I found a familiar figure sitting on the bench outside my condo. William looking older and more tired than I remembered, holding a sleeping infant in his arms. Seeing William sitting there with my grandson in his arms was like being doused with ice water. For a moment, I froze, keys in hand, unable to process that they had found me. Then the baby stirred, making those small, snuffling sounds that infants make, and reality rushed back. "William," I said, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "How did you find me?" He stood awkwardly, balancing the sleeping child. "It was not easy," he admitted. "But when you sent the rattle, it had an Arizona return address label. The city was smudged, but it gave me somewhere to start. I hired another investigator, had him check retirement communities. Your first name is still Howard. Eventually, he found you." I nodded, impressed, despite myself, at his persistence. "And you brought the baby all this way?" "Alexander," he said, looking down at his son. "Your grandson, I thought you should meet him. And I thought maybe seeing him might make you reconsider coming home." Home. As if my home was still with him, still defined by his expectations. "I am home," I said quietly. Then, because I could not ignore the reality of the sleeping child, I added, "Would you like to come inside? It is hot out here for the baby." William followed me into the condo, looking around with barely concealed surprise at the modest but comfortable space. I had decorated sparingly, but with items that brought me joy. A few desert landscapes, I had painted myself comfortable furniture in earth tones, shelves filled with books I finally had time to read. "It is nice," he said, in a tone that suggested he found it anything but. "Smaller than I expected." "It suits me," I replied, unwilling to defend my choices. "Can I get you something to drink, water, coffee?" "Water would be good," he said, settling onto the sofa with Alexander still sleeping against his shoulder. I brought 2 glasses of water and sat in the armchair across from him. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. This man who was my son but felt like a stranger. "Sophia did not come?" I asked finally. William's mouth tightened. "No, she does not understand why I wanted to find you. She thinks we should just move on, accept that you have abandoned us." "I did not abandon you, William. I removed myself from a toxic relationship. There is a difference." He flinched slightly at the word toxic. "Is that really how you see our relationship after everything Mom and you did to raise me?" "It is what our relationship had become," I said carefully. "Not what it always was, not what it had to be. But by the end, yes, that is what it was. You were using emotional manipulation to try to control my finances. That is toxic." William looked down at the baby, avoiding my gaze. "I was desperate," he said softly. "The debts, the mortgage, the lifestyle Sophia expects. It was all closing in on me. I thought you could help, should help. You are my father." "I am. And I did help you, William. I put you through college without debt. I contributed to your wedding. I taught you values and work ethic. But somewhere along the way you decided that was not enough, that you were entitled to more. Entitled to control over my retirement savings, my house, my choices." The baby whimpered, and William automatically began to rock him gently. It was strange to see my son in this paternal role, showing a tenderness I had not witnessed in him for years. "May I?" I asked, gesturing to the child. William hesitated, then carefully transferred Alexander to my arms. The weight of the infant felt both familiar and alien. It had been so many years since William himself had been this small. I looked down at my grandson's face, seeing echoes of Linda in the curve of his cheeks, hints of my own father in the shape of his brow. "He is beautiful," I said honestly. "He is." William agreed, a note of genuine pride in his voice. "Dad, I made mistakes. I know that. But he should know his grandfather. We should be a family." I continued looking at the baby, considering my words carefully. "What does being a family mean to you, William? Because from where I sit, it had come to mean that I should sacrifice my security and independence for your comfort. That is not a healthy family dynamic." "It does not have to be that way," he said, leaning forward. "We can start over. No more talk about money. Just be in each other's lives again." I wanted to believe him. Looking at my grandson's innocent face, I wanted desperately to believe that William had changed, had recognized his behavior for what it was. But something in his phrasing nagged at me. "No more talk about money," I repeated. "William, does Sophia know you are here?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Not exactly. She thinks I took Alexander to visit a college friend who lives in Phoenix. Why lie to her about it?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that reminded me painfully of his younger self. "Because she would not have supported me coming. She thinks we should accept your decision and move on with our lives." "And you disagree?" "You are my father. he said again, as if that explained everything. And now there is Alexander. Family should be together. I handed the baby back to William, feeling a resolve settle over me. William, why are you really here? Is it truly just to reconnect, or is there something else? He would not meet my eyes. Of course I want to reconnect. That is the main thing. But I also thought, I thought if you met Alexander, saw what a good father I am trying to be, you might want to help secure his future. College tuition keeps rising, and with Sophia's loans still hanging over us. And there it was. The real purpose of this cross-country trip with an infant. Not genuine reconciliation, but another attempt to access my finances, this time using my grandchild as leverage. William, I said, a deep sadness settling over me. Nothing has changed, has it? You are still seeing me primarily as a financial resource. This visit bringing Alexander, it is all part of a strategy to get me to pay Sophia's loans or fund your lifestyle. That is not fair, he protested. I really do want you back in our lives. The financial help would just be an added benefit. An added benefit that was important enough for you to track me down and bring an infant across the country, I observed. Important enough to lie to your wife about. William's face flushed. You just do not understand the pressure I am under. Sophia's family has certain expectations. We need to live in the right neighborhood, belong to the right clubs, send Alexander to the right preschool eventually. It is all about connections, about setting him up for success. And you think real success comes from living beyond your means and teaching your son that he is entitled to other people's money? I asked quietly. That is not what this is about. I think it is exactly what this is about, I said, standing up. William, I love you. You are my son. And I love that little boy in your arms, even though I just met him. But I will not be manipulated, not even with my grandchild as the tool. So you are throwing us out? He asked incredulously. Your own family. I am not throwing you out. You are welcome to stay the night. The guest room is small but comfortable. We can spend time together. I can get to know Alexander better. But if your purpose here is to convince me to fund a lifestyle you cannot afford, then yes, this visit needs to end. William stood abruptly, jostling the baby who began to cry. You are a selfish old man, he said, bouncing Alexander while glaring at me. You have all this money you will never use, and you would rather live in this retirement village than help your own son. I have offered to help you in ways that matter, I said calmly. I have offered relationship time, love. But those are not the kinds of help you are interested in. Keep your love, he spat. Sophia was right. We do not need you. He stormed out the door, slamming behind him. Through the window, I watched him strap the crying baby into a car seat in a rental car parked at the curb. He drove away without a backward glance. I sank back into my chair, a storm of emotions washing over me. Grief for the relationship that seemed irreparably broken. Anger at William's continued manipulation. And a deep aching sadness for Alexander, an innocent caught in the middle of adult failures. I called David that evening to update him on William's surprise visit. I am sorry it went that way, he said after I had explained. But not surprised, unfortunately. I keep hoping something will change, I admitted. Seeing him with the baby, I thought maybe fatherhood would have shifted his perspective. It may yet, David said wisely. These things take time. The fact that he sought you out at all shows some attachment beyond just financial interest. I wanted to believe that was true, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Still, for Alexander's sake, I decided to leave a door open. I sent a package to William and Sophia's address a week later. It contained a savings bond for Alexander, modest but meaningful, and a letter. In the letter, I expressed my joy at meeting my grandson, my ongoing love for William despite our differences, and my hope that someday we could have a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial expectations. I concluded with, "My door is always open to you, William, and especially to Alexander, but only on the basis of family love, not financial transactions. I hope someday you will understand the difference." I received no acknowledgement of the package, no thank you note, no photos of Alexander as he grew. Just silence. And in that silence, I continued to build my new life day by day, finding purpose and peace in my choices. As the seasons changed in Arizona, so too did the rhythm of my days. The acute pain of William's visit and rejection gradually faded into a dull ache that I carried but did not let define me. I expanded my volunteer work, now teaching woodworking skills to at-risk youth through a community program. I joined a hiking group that explored the desert trails early in the morning before the heat became unbearable. I even started dating occasionally, something I had not considered possible after Linda. Margaret was a widow who lived 3 doors down from my condo. She had moved to Arizona from Michigan after her husband's death, seeking the warmth for her arthritic joints. We met at a community potluck, bonding over our shared Midwestern origins and love of classic movies. Our relationship developed slowly, beginning with coffee, after morning walks, progressing to dinner at local restaurants, and eventually to comfortable evenings watching old films on her sofa. She knew my story. I had been honest with her from the beginning about William, about my decision to leave Oregon and change my name, about the painful visit with my grandson. Margaret was a good listener and offered perspective from her own experience with adult children. She had 3, all still in Michigan, all with various challenges in their relationships with her. "Children break your heart," she said one evening, after I had received another update from David about William's continued attempts to discover details of my finances. "But you cannot let that destroy you. You have to keep living your life." Margaret's wisdom and companionship were balms to my spirit. She understood boundaries in a way William never had, respecting my independence, while offering genuine connection. With her, I rediscovered the joy of partnership based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. 2 years passed in this new life. I received occasional updates from David about William and his family. Alexander was growing according to the few public social media posts David's assistant monitored for me. Sophia had finally passed the bar exam and taken a position with a prestigious law firm. William had changed jobs twice, each time moving to a higher-paying position with more status, but from what I could tell, no greater satisfaction. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts for Alexander through David each year. Simple, thoughtful items rather than extravagant displays of wealth. A hand-carved wooden train I had made myself. A collection of classic children's books that William had loved as a boy. A child-sized toolbox with real but safe tools, hoping to pass on my love of working with my hands. I never knew if these gifts were given to Alexander or discarded as I received no acknowledgement. And then, on an ordinary Wednesday morning, 3 years after my departure from Oregon, I received a call from David that changed everything again. "Howard," he said, his voice unusually somber, "I have some difficult news. William and Sophia have filed for divorce." I sat down heavily on the nearest chair. "What happened?" "From what I can gather, there were financial issues," David said. "Apparently, Sophia's spending habits did not change even after she started practicing law. They are deeply in debt, the house is in foreclosure, and there are accusations on both sides about financial irresponsibility." I closed my eyes, picturing William going through this pain, picturing little Alexander caught in the middle. And the child? What about custody? "Sophia is seeking full custody with limited visitation for William. She is claiming his work schedule makes him an unsuitable primary caregiver. My heart ached for my son, for the grandson I barely knew. Whatever William's flaws, whatever mistakes he had made with me, the thought of him losing access to his child was unbearable. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. David hesitated. "William has not reached out to me," he said carefully. "This information came through professional channels, not directly from him." "I understand," I said. "But if he does reach out, please let him know I am here." 2 weeks passed with no word. I found it difficult to focus on my usual activities, my thoughts constantly returning to William and Alexander. Margaret noticed my distraction, but did not press, simply offering her steady presence and occasional reminders to eat properly and get enough sleep. Then, early one Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find William standing there, looking haggard and much older than his years. Beside him stood Alexander, now a sturdy toddler with curious eyes that studied me solemnly. "Dad," William said, his voice cracking slightly. "I need help." I stepped aside to let them in, my heart racing. Alexander clutched a stuffed dinosaur in one hand and his father's pant leg with the other, clearly uncertain about this stranger and new place. "Hello, Alexander," I said, kneeling down to his level. "I am your grandpa. I have a cookie jar in the kitchen. Would you like to see if there are any dinosaur cookies in there?" He looked up at William for permission. "It is okay, buddy," William said. "Grandpa makes good cookies." I led them to the kitchen, found the dinosaur-shaped cookies I had baked just the day before, in a strange moment of premonition, and set Alexander up at the small table with cookies and milk. Then I turned to William. "What kind of help do you need?" I asked directly. William ran a hand through his hair, which now showed strands of gray at the temples. "Everything has fallen apart," he said quietly, mindful of Alexander's presence. "Sophia and I are divorcing. The house is in foreclosure. Her spending was out of control, but I enabled it, trying to keep up with her family's expectations. I am drowning in debt, and now she wants to take Alexander away from me." "I heard about the divorce," I admitted. "David told me." William nodded wearily. "I figured he might." "Dad, I know. I have no right to ask anything of you after how I have behaved. But this is not about me anymore. It is about Alexander. I cannot lose him." "What specifically do you need?" I asked, still cautious. "Legal help mainly," he said. "Sophia's father is paying for her attorney, who is one of the best in Portland. I cannot afford that kind of representation on my own. And I need somewhere stable to live to show the court I can provide a proper home for Alexander during my custody time." I studied my son's face, looking for signs of the old manipulation, the entitled expectation. What I saw instead was genuine desperation, fear, and something I had not seen in years: humility. "Before I agree to anything," I said carefully, "I need to understand something. Are you here because you genuinely want my help for Alexander's sake? Or are you here because you have run out of other options?" William flinched, but held my gaze. "Both," he admitted. "I have exhausted every other avenue, but that doesn't mean I do not genuinely want your help, your presence in our lives. These past few years, watching Alexander grow up without you, it has made me realize what I threw away. Not just financial support, but your wisdom, your example. And if I help you legally, but do not give you money for a lifestyle beyond your means, I do not expect that anymore," he said quietly. "I have learned some hard lessons, Dad. The fancy house, the expensive cars, the country club membership, none of that made me happy. None of it was worth losing my father over, and none of it lasted anyway." I looked over at Alexander, who was carefully breaking his cookie into tiny pieces before eating them, a look of intense concentration on his small face. My grandson. Linda's grandson. A chance to heal what had been broken. I will help with the legal expenses, I said finally. And I have a spare room here where you and Alexander can stay while you sort things out. But there will be conditions, William. Anything, he said quickly. You will need to find a job here in Arizona, something within your skills, but perhaps with a better work-life balance than you had before. You will need to live within your means. No credit card debt, no luxury purchases, and you will need to attend financial counseling sessions with me. William swallowed hard, but nodded. I can do that. I want to do that. I want Alexander to have a different example than the one I have been setting. And most importantly, I continued, our relationship cannot be transactional. I am not an ATM or a solution to your problems. I am your father, Alexander's grandfather. If we rebuild our family, it has to be on the basis of love, respect, and healthy boundaries. I understand, William said softly. And I am truly sorry, Dad. For everything. For the way I treated you, for the things I said, for not standing up to Sophia when she was disrespectful to you. I lost sight of what matters. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw genuine remorse in his eyes. The entitled, manipulative man who had demanded I pay his wife's loans seemed gone, replaced by someone humbled by life's harsh lessons. Then welcome home, I said, opening my arms. William stepped into my embrace, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Over his shoulder I saw Alexander watching us curiously, a half-eaten cookie forgotten in his hand. Alexander, I called gently, would you like to come give your grandpa a hug too? He slid down from his chair and approached cautiously, still clutching his dinosaur. I knelt down and opened my arms again, and after a moment's hesitation, he stepped into them, smelling of cookies and the indefinable sweet scent of childhood. As I held my son and grandson, I felt Linda's presence strongly, as if she were standing beside us, witnessing this healing. There would be challenges ahead. The custody battle, William's job searched the process of rebuilding trust between us. But in that moment, I knew we had taken the first step toward becoming a real family again. Later that evening, after Alexander was asleep in the spare room, and William had showered and changed into borrowed clothes, we sat on my patio watching the desert sunset. I never understood before, William said, breaking the comfortable silence. Why you left. Why you would choose this simple life over everything you had built in Oregon. And now, I prompted. Now I think I get it, he said slowly. It is about peace. About living authentically instead of trying to impress others or meet their expectations. About valuing relationships over possessions. I nodded, pleased that he had come to this understanding on his own. I want that for Alexander, he continued. I want him to grow up knowing his worth isn't measured by his address or his clothes or what car he drives when he is older. I want him to know what really matters. We will teach him together, I promised, day by day. William smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from him in years. Thank you, Dad, for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to. That is what fathers do, I said simply. We wait, we hope, and we welcome our children home when they are ready to return. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because the relationship had become toxic? Did it eventually lead to healing, or was the break permanent? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of family redemption and the courage to set healthy boundaries. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message today, share it with them. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and others is to walk away until true change is possible. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and peace on your own journey.